Ready?
So, my name is Alex, and the issue we're going to be debating today is it morally right for the NSA to be able to access your information? I affirm with the resolution that the NSA ought to be able to access your information for the sake of national security. I see this as a safety issue. The central question of this resolution is whether or not the NSA should be able to access our information in order to find a potential threat. I'm basing my argument on the sacrifice criterion. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, a sacrifice is the act of giving up something that you want to keep, especially in order to get or do something else, or to help someone. And citizenship is a sacrifice. You are giving up some of your rights and liberties in order to be a part of the country. Now, many people don't think of citizenship this way. People aren't okay with hearing that. As citizens of the United States, a country known for freedom, that we are actually giving up some of our rights to be citizens. We've all heard about the whole Edward Snowden situation. He leaked a whole bunch of information of American servers, and basically he was an employee for the NSA, and he leaked a whole bunch of private information. When they asked President Obama to speak out about this issue, he said that it's important to recognize that you can't have 100% security and also have 100% privacy and zero inconvenience. So President Obama himself also admits that to be a citizen of the United States requires a certain amount of sacrifice. Now, the resolution is not about whether or not the actions of the NSA are moral or not. It's really about prioritizing the safety of the people over the privacy of an individual. We must also take into account that the NSA is a government agency created specifically to monitor adversaries in cyberspace. They're here to protect us. And anybody these days can be an adversary. ISIS has been known to recruit Americans from American soil to plot against us. So we really can't be too safe. Now, ever since Snowden leaked classified information, people have been getting all riled up about privacy. They think, oh, like the NSA is watching everything we do, they're hearing everything we say, they're logging everything. And that's not, you gotta understand that the NSA has been doing this for a while now. The NSA started in 1917, back in World War I. Back then they were intercepting telegraph messages during the war. And they've been doing the same thing ever since. They've been monitoring messages in order to protect the people. Since 9/11, they've hugely upgraded their monitoring of cyberspace. Obviously, after the attacks, the country was on the edge of its seat, worried about the next attack. So see, the government has been watching us our entire lifetime. So why is it a problem now? Is it even a problem if it doesn't affect us in any negative way? And like I said before, you've heard about how the NSA is always watching us, or always listening to us, and you've heard about the giant databases of information that they collect from everybody. These are all over-exaggerations. First of all, the data that the NSA collects is metadata. Now, according to the National Information Standards Organization, metadata is structured information that describes, explains, locates, or otherwise makes it easier to retrieve, use, or manage information. So, for example, they don't listen to your calls, they don't read your messages, they just save a log of it, so that if needed, one day they can just come back and check on it. So they're really not watching you; they're just saving your information for further need. Now, according to the Washington Post, the National Security Agency is collecting less than 30% of all American calls. So they're not even watching all of us. They're not even watching half of us. They're just collecting 30% of our calls. That's nothing. See, the government doesn't have the time or resources to sit there and watch your every single move. One of the things that people often don't understand about the NSA is they're here to protect us. Their job is literally to prevent attacks. Now, cyberspace is massive and it contains a ridiculous amount of data. The American servers are the largest on the planet, and they account for, I believe that 80% of the world's traffic travels through American servers. With access to this much information, the NSA could stop plenty of attacks. When questioned about the Edward Snowden leak, President Obama announced that around 50 terrorist attacks have been thwarted because of the NSA. Now, people don't get to see that the good jobs that the NSA does, because their job is preventive. As long as nothing happens to us, then they're doing a good job. One of the biggest reasons for the increase in NSA activity is because of 9/11. Obviously after 9/11, the country's scared, everything's riled up. and this allowed for what is called the ratchet effect. According to the Harvard Law School National Security Journal, the ratchet effect is an unidirectional change in some legal variable that can become entrenched over time, setting in motion a process that can repeat itself indefinitely, kind of like a slippery slope. You know what I mean? Because of the attack, they allowed for the expansion of many other groups. Now, former Vice President Dick Cheney has claimed that had the bulk spying programs been in place, the government could have stopped 9/11. See, one of the hijackers of the plane, I believe his name was Khalid Midhar, was suspected by the NSA, but they couldn't really do anything about it because the ratchet effect hasn't taken place and all the expansion of anti-terrorism laws hasn't happened. Had NSA had the power they did before, they could have stopped 9/11 potentially. See, the NSA is a government agency made purely for the sake of the American citizens. They're often misunderstood and displayed as over-invasive, which results in all the bad stigma surrounding them. In the end, their mission is to keep us safe, and as citizens, we have given up some of our privacy so that they can do their job.
608. Cool. All right. So, questions that I have is give me your opinion on Snowden and how you think it affects the NSA.
Well, Edward Snowden, especially since he worked at the NSA and exposed confidential information, I guess it's cool that he let the people know that like we're watching over them. I just think to publicly shame our country that the way he did was just not right. I mean, I'm pretty sure every country watches over their own citizens to protect them, but Edward Snowden did it in a way that he just made the United States look really bad, and I just don't think that's right.
Okay. So when we were talking about lack of privacy, you said that the NSA was established in 1917, and it's been around for a long time. Mm-hmm. And also within your speech, you admitted that we have to sacrifice our citizenship, and it comes with liberties, and we have to give up rights. But what's your opinion when it comes to the fact that we've already lost our liberties, and the fact that we've already been spied on for literally 100 years now?
Well, I mean, is the problem here like moral, or are we really worried about the safety of citizens here? I think the NSA is a government agency. Their job is to protect us, and I think that's their most important job. I feel like they should be able to access our information in order to protect us. I mean, they've been doing this for quite some time. We've had no bad effects. We've never had a problem with it before, so why is it a problem now? They're not doing anything to hurt us, it's just watching over us.
Okay. Well, also you also stated the ratchet effect, where when someone becomes fearful of a situation, it expedites and increases, the level of fear that we have. How do you explain, or what is your opinion on how post 9/11 fear and the Snowden effect all increased a massive amount of unnecessary government funding? Obviously, it costs a lot of money for the NSA to operate, but when you instill fear and you say people need the NSA, how does that affect the way that we're actually operating the system?
Well, the real problem is Edward Snowden. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so we're talking about how with your ratchet effect, there's fear still. So it caught, and between post 9/11 and Snowden effect, we had to spend a lot of money to make sure that our citizens were safe. So what do you think about the massive increase in a thing that we instill fear with, which is the NSA? You say we need the NSA to make sure that we're safe. What's your opinion on that?
I mean, we do need the NSA to be safe. So we have internal threats that we could never know about. We have the person right next to you could be planning something right now, and you would never know. All their information is on their logs. If they've been suspected, then the NSA could just go in and dig around a little bit, and if there's nothing there, no harm.
All right. So the issue that I'm going to be discussing today is whether or not government should be able to monitor citizens. The resolution I have is that the NSA is attempting to monitor all American usage on cell phones and internet would create mass hysteria and more intended fear that we would have more problems and less solutions to it. The introduction is since 1917, the NSA has been watching our activities for over 100 years, so we've already kind of lost the fact that our rights are kind of being already violated. Alexander Hamilton explains that history will teach us that the former has been founded on much more certain road into the introduction of depositism than the latter. And for those of the career by paying ubiquitous court to the people, commencing the monarchies and ending tyrants. So the first example of this is that it's a violation of our rights. It's an unneeded government entity that's been causing billions of dollars in expenditures every year. Since 9/11, we had the ratchet effect where we're inclined all this fear within the people and our citizens. So we, as the people, feel the need to be able to spend our tax dollars on making sure that we feel safer. And the NSA hasn't been doing an effective job of doing so. In the past number of years, there's only been a small handful, less than 10 actual attacks that have been prevented using the NSA. And when you include all the cost of the time between 9/11 and Edward Snowden, the cost of operating all of that severely outweighs the benefit that they can actually do for us. This goes hand in hand with the modernization law. Technology moves too fast for laws to be changed, and this instills that we can't get to people fast enough where if they are in fear or they are in a situation, the NSA doesn't have the capability to take action quickly, which instead they can only collect certain amounts of data. So that being said, one of the issues is that Obama can't specifically look at people, they can only collect statistics. So one of the things was that Edward Snowden released lots of confidential information about governments about under-the-table moves, which offers that the government can have holes in their values. This being said, is why should we actually trust the government? If we have a contractor who's working for the government, Edward Snowden, who exposed all these truths and came to find out that the government was lying to its people, what makes the NSA any different that they're spying on us and what their actions to do so are? Although President Obama said we must give up some of our freedoms in order to be a successful and safe country, President Obama said he has put strict protocols that require judicial and warrant reviews from all prison targets. So even in the case that there is a mass hysteria of lots of data collection of these numbers or like cell phone numbers, et cetera, you can't do anything until, say there's a lot of numbers going to one cell phone within 30 minutes. That's not enough time for someone to react or get a warrant or someone to knock down someone's door. And that time, technology moves too fast and someone can already be killed at that point. My second idea is that criminals are aware that they're going to be caught. When you're going to be doing an illegal activity, you want to be able to stay low on what you're doing. You don't want to take a lot of attention. So the concept of the NSA is to protect individuals from crime but not expose your personal information, which is hard because President Obama said you can't collect data, you can only collect statistics about it, you can't look into people's actual emails. So it doesn't make an effective policy where you can look into someone's program but can't take an effective action due to the fact that you don't have any grounds or proof to actually take an action into it. But although people prefer NSA for its crime reasons, 62% of Americans say it's more important than the government to investigate possible terrorist threats, although it is invasion of personal privacy, but is not a retaliation for how much we are spending. Currently, 56% of phone calls are being recorded, and 5% of people are okay with monitoring. But that entails that only 30% of all calls are actually being recorded. So with the high volume that the NSA is performing at, and only capturing 30% of those calls, it kind of creates an inefficiency of how much you can actually do and how much we're actually spending time, how much we're ensuring the safety of our citizens. In 2016, Arthur McNeil was approached by the FBI after there had been a high number of weird searches that he had. He was planning a very thought-out murder. Although when the NSA looked into it, they couldn't arrest him on the grounds for a murder that he committed because they couldn't say anything. At the time, he was also claimed to have been writing a book while also during the time of his wife's death. So the NSA could not do anything with the grounds that his internet history proved that he was going to plan on killing his wife. And my final one is that it's a violation of our rights. The NSA actions of the data collections are necessarily relatively illegal. And NSA information gathering in the courts, part of the program is that any evidence that the authorities were abused or in privacy of an American was illegally or improperly invaded. Although the NSA does have a system of balance and checks and limits to ensure legal procedural limits, it makes it hard for the NSA to be able to take any action. All in all, the government exists for a foreign power and the common defense. The government creates laws to protect its citizens from external threats, but at what point are we being safe from it? At what point are we spending too much? At what point are we instilled fear? I personally think that the NSA is outdated, unnecessary, and no longer a need for our U.S. safety. Yeah.
It's not going to hurt them to snoop, but if something actually happens, then that's a problem.
Okay, cool. That is it for us, so I'll go back. All right, so I'm gonna, and then after that you go for a minute, then I go for a minute.
Okay. So earlier you said you talked about how the cost of the NSA and its production is not worth the lives. Mm-hmm. Are you saying that there's a certain, you can connect a number to how much a life costs?
I'm not saying that we're connecting the price of a human life to the cost of a government entity, although I am saying that the NSA is not needed. We have enough external, sources in which we can say, the FBI or the CIA can investigate into these types of things. I think that with the efficiency that the NSA is running, where you're only monitoring 30% of the American people's information, for how much Americans are spending tax dollars on to their efficiency compared to all the other government entities out there, I don't think that the NSA specifically should be a strong government entity needed to protect the citizens. I think that we can reclaim that into a sub-department of the FBI or something that can save the people money, given the fact that the NSA's effectiveness is not very strong.
Okay, you talked about earlier how, the NSA thrives off of mass hysteria. Mm-hmm. Is it really mass hysteria though? I mean, the threat of terrorist attacks is probably one of the highest it's ever been. It's a real threat. I mean, just last week we stormed one of the last cities that ISIS held. Things are getting intense right now. Is it really mass hysteria?
I think that it's mass hysteria depending on the level that you claim it at. When I think about mass hysteria, I think about when people are thinking about like Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. When people say that Clinton's going to take away everyone's guns, it creates mass hysteria and it instills fear in people saying, I need to go get my guns now, I need to go purchase it now, and I need this because if not, it's going to be gone. And when the government kind of instills that fear on the people, you're going to say, hey, if you don't support this entity or if you don't let us watch your information, you're going to be attacked or you're going to do this. So I'm not saying that specifically is going to create mass hysteria, but I also think that between the Stone reports and post 9/11, there's a level of fear that that the U.S. government can kind of amp up and be able to push people to admit that they're scared of some situation. One more.
So you talked about how the NSA is really an unneeded government identity. So is it really unneeded? I mean, who's going to protect us on cyberspace? Who's gonna be the one digging up information on our adversaries? Is the NSA really unneeded?
I'm not saying that the NSA. Well, I'm saying the NSA is unneeded, but it can also be relocated into a different government entity, like I said earlier. But also in the beginning of my speech, I also admitted that modernization of law was a very big issue. The fact that technology is moving faster than the law creates an installation where we need to be able to evaluate what we want to monitor and at what capacity we can do so in order to make sure that it's safe. The NSA is kind of going in kind of blind. I feel as if the NSA or the FBI or CIA were to come up with a strong plan for cyber terrorism, it would be more effective than the NSA working at an inefficient level.
And then you share it. So before I end my argument, I just want to point something out. Think about how strong one person is. Think about how much damage one individual can cause if they really wanted to. Now, what is going to stop one single individual? How are you gonna comb through the millions of our citizens to find that one person that's seeking for harm? There's only one. The NSA is one of the few organizations that we have to defend ourselves against these kinds of individuals. Their job really is just to protect us and prevent any big attacks. Have you seen any big attacks lately? Why? Because the criminals are deterred just by the presence of the NSA. The mass hysteria that's created over the NSA is actually keeping the bad guys at bay. And I believe that the NSA should be able to access any information as long as it's for the good of the people.
Awesome. Cool. We'll get out now.